Today, we are diving into the invisible numbers that pretty much run your life. Seriously, we're talking about everything from the price of your home to the safety of your city. It all boils down to data. But what happens when that data is, well, just plain wrong? Let's get into it.
I mean, just think about it for a second. You're about to make the biggest purchase of your life. Or maybe your family's safety is on the line. You are trusting, like really trusting, that the numbers behind those big decisions are solid. But are they? These aren't just hypotheticals. This stuff has major real-world consequences for all of us.
So, how do we get the answers to these massive questions? Well, it all comes down to one powerful tool. It's a method that everyone, from city planners to real estate appraisers, even AI models uses to make sense of our super complex world. And that tool, it's called the Market Data Approach, or MDA for short. Now, put simply, all it does is look at real-world data, what's actually happened out there, to figure out cause and effect, and to pin down what something is really worth. Its greatest strength is that it's supposed to be grounded in reality.
Okay, so what's super interesting is that MDA kind of has two different sides to it. On one hand, you've got what's called mechanism-based analytics. This is the stuff that helps city planners figure out why a flood spreads a certain way. It explains the why. On the other hand, you have the market data approach that's all about real estate. That one's just trying to measure what people are willing to pay. So one explains the system, the other measures the market.
So we've got this powerful tool. It's based in reality. Sounds great, right? What could possibly go wrong? Well, this is where our story takes a bit of a turn. Because in a place like the Philippines, we get a front row seat to how this powerful tool can fail. And that's because any tool is only as good as the materials you give it to work with.
And that right there is the core problem. In the Philippines, the data itself, the information you feed into these models, is often the weakest link in the whole chain. It's fragmented, it's incomplete, and sometimes it's just distorted. The very foundation of the whole thing can be super shaky.
So what does that actually look like on the ground? Well, first off, the data is all fragmented. Just imagine every local government office is its own separate kitchen, and each one has a secret recipe book they don't share with anyone else. You can't get the full picture. There's no central database, no national system for tracking real estate sales. And then, to top it all off, it's super common for people to underdeclare the sale price of a property to pay less in taxes. That means the official record isn't even the real price. So, because good, solid data is so hard to get, analysts have to get, creative. They use proxies, which are basically just stand-ins. So, for example, instead of actual income data, they might use satellite images of nighttime lights to guess how wealthy a community is. Or an appraiser might use the asking price from an online listing instead of the actual final sale price. You can already see how this could get a little dicey, right?
And this is the absolute key. A proxy is not the same as reality. It's just not. That online listing price, that's what someone hopes to get. It's not a fact. The brightness of a city's lights at night, that tells you nothing about the huge informal economy that's buzzing during the day. Relying on these proxies, it's a really risky game.
Now, when you start mixing all this stuff together, the fragmented data, the underreporting, the risky proxies, what do you end up with? You get a system that is just riddled with hidden biases. And these biases don't just cause little errors, they can create a completely warped picture of reality. Let's just look at a few. You've got geographic bias. This means if you build a model using data from Manila, it's going to be totally useless out in a rural province. Or how about social bias? This one's huge. Digital data from, say, a ride-hailing app completely misses the millions of people who rely on jeepneys and tricycles every single day. And then there's anchoring bias, where an appraiser gets stuck on the very first piece of information they see, like a developer's price list, and ignores what the market is actually doing later on. So all of this, the messy data, the stand-ins, the biases, it all points to one simple, unbreakable rule in the world of data. It's one of the oldest rules in computing, and it is as true today as it ever was.
It's really just a chain reaction, right? It's simple logic. If you start with weak, unreliable data, what do you get? You're going to build a weak, unreliable model. And that weak model is, of course, going to spit out a weak, unreliable result, whether that's a flood map or a house price.
And that leads us to this, the principle of garbage in, garbage out. It's a law you just can't break. You cannot, I repeat, cannot, create a reliable, truthful result from unreliable, untruthful information. The quality of your answer depends completely on the quality of your ingredients.
And look, this isn't some niche thing. This applies to everything. Those super sophisticated AI models that everyone's talking about, garbage in, garbage out.
The critical urban plans that are supposed to save lives in a disaster? Garbage in, garbage out. It is a universal truth of data.
So you might be thinking, is this whole thing just broken? Is it hopeless? Well, not at all, actually. The experts, the real pros, they know the data is a mess. So they've developed a whole toolkit of techniques they use to solve this puzzle and find the real truth hidden inside all those flawed numbers. So why even bother with MDA if the data is so bad? Well, because for all its flaws, it's still the best tool we have. For one, it's based on how people and systems actually behave in the real world. It's also transparent. You can see how it works, unlike some of those AI black boxes. And maybe most importantly, it allows for a skilled human expert to step in, use their judgment, and make corrections.
And here's how they do it. Professionals will run a sensitivity analysis to see just how shaky their model is. They do ground truthing, which is exactly what it sounds like. They physically go out into the field to check if the data matches reality. They cross-validate their work, comparing it to other methods to see if the answers line up. And they perform outlier analysis, which is just a fancy way of saying they find and remove weird data points, like a desperate property sale, that don't reflect the true market.
All right, let's bring this all home. This gets us to the single biggest takeaway from all of this. Because in a world that is more and more driven by data, knowing how to question that data is probably the most important skill you can have.
So here's the bottom line. The market data approach can be reliable, but only, and this is a big only, when the expert behind it does the hard work. They have to verify the data, they have to control for the biases, and they have to really think critically about the final result. The number isn't the final answer, it's just a beginning of the investigation. So the next time you see a statistic, a price tag, a map, don't just ask, what does the data say? Ask yourself, who collected this data, what might they have missed, and can I really trust this? The answer to that question, well, that could change everything.